violence, non-combatant targets, intention of spreading fear, and political aims. These are the keywords of terrorism. But is this the right way to define terrorism? If the attacks on military personnel or political leaders are the act of terrorism, thus people will agree that terrorism must be physically violent. Or is it enough to simply instill fear? In order for terrorism to be described accurately, theoretical perspectives such as realism and liberalism were used. As realism had emphasized on the competition and conflict in international relations, liberalism on the other hand emphasized on how war will help the countries to develop military strength and it can be used to fight other countries or oppress its own citizens. The way realism and liberalism define terrorism clearly shows that terrorists will affect the stability of a country both in politics and economy. September 11, 2001. On Tuesday morning in the United States of America, the event has ended many innocent lives and people having trauma due to this tragedy's attack. When mentioned on terrorism, the 9/11 attack was one of the common events to be reminisced once again. The terrorism event that was planned by an Islamic extremist group named Al-Qaeda was founded by Osama bin Laden. This 9/11 operation began with the 19 terrorist men hijacked the 4 US airplanes where 2 of them were flown to the iconic place at New York City, Twin Towers of the World Trade Center. Then, the third plane went to Washington, D.C. and hit the Pentagon, while the last plane flew to Shanksville, Pennsylvania and crashed. It was indeed a tragedious event since the attack had involved roughly 2,753 casualties in the North and South Tower of the World Trade Center, as well as the hijacked plane crashed into military headquarters in Pentagon, Washington, D.C., which resulted in 184 people died at the locations. Thus, it indicates weaknesses the Defense Department of the United States. As for the final attack, the final plane that was hijacked had finally crashed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, making the final sum of the deaths were up to 3,000 people. An event, whether it is a good or bad one, will happen because of several reasons or factors in a precise word. Among the factors are the US attack on Islamic State, which are Libya and Sudan. Next was the poverty, weak and failing state. And the last one is because of the financial support from Saudi Arabia for the terrorists. On the first factor, the US attacks on both Islamic State has aroused the anger of the Islamic terrorists that claim it was a conspiracy by the US. On the other hand, the US claimed that the terrorists had caused their soldiers' death and the mastermind behind the bombing incident in both states. The second factor, which is the poverty, weak and failing state, explained that based on the National Bureau of Economic Research shows that the poverty will increase the likelihood of political coups and civil wars, thus linking terrorism to seemingly illogical economic conditions. The informal education, that is, learning about the Quran by memorization and simply applied a concept of jihad that in the end made them misunderstood about what jihad was all about. All of these were usually being applied by the Middle Eastern state in madrasa, especially by the poor. It is understandable after a week from the event. The U.S. Trade Representative Robert Zoellick spoke of the need to liberalize international trades and thus reduce poverty as a means of combating terrorism. Finally, as mentioned before, financial support from Saudi Arabia had caused the attack to happen. However, there is no solid evidence that prove they were the one who support the terrorists. Although the terrorists were talk of jihad, they had a misunderstanding of the concept. They also didn't mind the money, but they believed that reward for jihad was peaceful heaven, and that was the main objective if they died because of the attack. This worst event not only caused the death and injury of many people. Among the impact are the rise of Islamophobia, the inflation of the US economy, and finally, it also triggered the Iraq War to happen in 2003. The rise of Islamophobia because of this 9/11 attack had caused the Muslim citizen who live in United States being treated unfair and was labeled as a terrorist. The Muslim citizen who being related to this case, Balbir Singh Sondi and Waqar Hassan, were both killed by assailants just because the Singh had beard and wear turban, while the other one because of the revenge for the 9/11 incident. Islamophobia has also made women in edgy situation. The Muslim women in US had been prohibited from wearing hijab in public and had a risk of being fired from work just because they were considered as a terrorist. This is definitely racism to begin with. When the US economy had faced inflation, the most affected one were the airlines and insurance companies. Not only that, the insecure feeling of the investor afraid that the US might be attacked once again had also caused the number of stock markets to have fallen more than 10%, and this was the biggest loss they ever had. The Iraq War in 2003. It is believed that this attack had triggered it to happen, as George W. Bush believed that Saddam Hussein was the leader of Al-Qaeda and the real mastermind of the attack. He then argued on how Iraq helped the terrorists on the attack by providing and manufacturing weapons for mass destruction. The US then even persuaded the public to start the war. It was a relief when the US president had ended on 1st May and Saddam Hussein was executed on 30th December 2006 under the crime against humanity. Every conflict or problem is sure to be solved with solutions. Control the border, remote video monitoring, control the movement of the terrorist group. These three are the solution for the 9/11 attack. For the first solution, which is control the border, This solution is sure to be work if a country control their own national border, such as passageway through the air, land and water. Even if it needs hard work and a lot of cost, it will be able to prevent the immigrants from crossing the border. Besides that, remote video monitoring, which was among the solutions used to combat or prevent the attack, may reduce the security operating costs at the same time. Live video monitoring, schedule video monitoring, and event-driven video monitoring. These three are the types of remote video monitoring. At the same time, it is important to control the movement of the terrorist group. This can be done by cutting the financial source of the group, and FBI should track down all the terrorists and make them wear electronic ankle bracelet to be able to control their movement. The definition, the theoretical perspective, the 9/11 attack, which explain on the impact, the factors, and finally the solution, will definitely make the public understand the word of terrorism. Hopefully, the terrorism can be avoided from happening in the future so that the universal peace can be promoted.